Good afternoon, Lisa.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Thank you for bringing everybody in to do this today. Hope we have a good session.
My treat. Well, how can we not show off these very cool people?
We'll give a minute, let some more people come in.
Roman, I hope everybody online with us is actually having lunch. That would be that would be a good thing. It's supposed to be lunch hour. So,
Yeah, but I can't eat.
well,
That wouldn't be a good visual.
That's a key facilitator tip, right, Lisa? Eat lunch when you can.
eat lunch. That's right. That's one thing. Stakeholders are always concerned that the facilitators aren't eating, and we always assure them, "Oh no, trust us. Yeah, it's better that we're doing what we're doing. It's absolutely fine." It's great. So, Chris, how did you have you actually been in sessions with facilitators? Is that something that you do much in your life?
No, I can't really say, although I've seen y'all at public meetings, and I mean, it's definitely a skill to be able to run a meeting and to be able to, deal with things when they get tense, or when someone sort of, grabs the floor and takes off in the wrong direction, or one that doesn't even pertain to things. So I've been amazed, and the way you take notes, and you can direct and focus the conversation, so it's just not a bunch of random people getting up and talking, but there's an outcome to the conversation. That's a skill. That's definitely a needed skill, I can imagine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I've been a facilitator for a really, really long time, and my kids, grew up with me doing that. And every once in a while, you'd be in some kind of a family meeting, and they'd be like, "Mom, you no facilitating at home. So I guess you're not supposed to do this at home."
Yeah, I could see a kid would be like, "Come on!" That's like
we know your tricks. We know your
okay
facilitator tricks.
Well, I think we're a little bit past noon, so I think we'll get going. Let me read my blurb here to everybody. Hello, everybody. On behalf of CivicWell, the Groundwater Exchange, and myself, welcome to our new series, Office Hours, which bring in experts to answer your questions. My name is Chris Austin. I'm otherwise known as Maven, and I publish the California Water News website, Maven's Notebook. For those who aren't familiar, Maven's Notebook is a website devoted to California water news. The website is updated 6 days a week with the latest water news gathered around the web, my own coverage of meetings and events, and even breaking news whenever it occurs. I invite you to check it out at mavensnotebook.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for free daily email service to get the latest news delivered to your inbox every morning. And there's a weekly version as well for those who might want a little less Maven in their email box, or just a recap of the week's news. I also publish the Groundwater Exchange, which is a website that collects and organizes resources for SGMA implementation from DWR, the State Water Board, NGOs, and others. There are pages on projects and actions such as groundwater recharge, as well as pages on avoiding undesirable results, a video gallery, an intro to SGMA in both English and Spanish, and a monthly SGMA implementation newsletter. I invite you to check it out at groundwaterexchange.org. We have many more office hour sessions in the work. On March 29th, we'll be talking about land repurposing with EDF's Anna Schiller and Vicki Espinoza. On April 4th, we have Maurice Hall from EDF as well. And on April 15th, tribal engagement with DWR's Tribal Policy Advisor, Anacita Agustinez. So registration will be opening soon on those events. So to stay informed on future office hours and other events, sign up for our email list, which is posted in the chat, or will be soon. Today's session is all about answering your questions. We're doing this as a Zoom meeting so it can be interactive, and so there's a lot of people here, but we'll do our best to manage things. And I am assisted today with Diana Vaz Gonzalez with CivicWell, formerly the Local Government Commission, and she will tell you how best to participate.
Thank you, Grace. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We're pretty excited about this office hours. So let's just do a quick round of Zoom instructions just to remind you how to participate. So if you want to send us a message, make sure to activate the menu that is at the bottom of your screen. You can do this by just moving your cursor and you're going to see a chat button. Make sure you click on it to access the message bar, and then you can start typing. You can either have the option to send it to everyone or to specific people. Now, to raise your virtual hand, just head over to the menu again and select the reactions button. This button will let you have different options to show non-verbal reactions on your video. And in that same window, you're gonna see an option that says raise your hand. This will let the host know that you have a comment or a question. And once the host let you know that it's your time to speak, please make sure to unmute by clicking on that little microphone button on the left side of the menu. Please remain muted while our speakers are presented. We'll make sure that you have a chance to speak up, share your comments and your questions. Now, if you have a question, you have issues with Zoom, send me a message in the chat and I'll work with you to troubleshoot and make sure you have a great experience today. Back to you, Chris.
Great. Thank you, Deanna. Okay, so I'm excited today to have Lisa Beutler and the facilitation team from Stantec here to answer your questions. Lisa is a senior principal public affairs specialist at Stantec. She serves as the executive facilitator on complex, high-profile collaborative projects, and in particular, Lisa and her team have been active on the ground, helping GSAs with their stakeholder engagement efforts in GSP plan development and implementation. Welcome, Lisa, to Office Hours. I'll let you introduce your team.
That's great. Well, I'll go ahead and just swirl through our team real quick. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Lisa, and welcome. Good to see some familiar faces and some new faces. My name is Emily Finnegan. I am one of our public affairs specialists at the Stantec team. And I am working in a number of basins across the state, actually with some folks on this call. I'm excited to dig into your questions. Prior to my work at Stantec, I worked at the Local Government Commission, now CivicWell, on our Sustainable Groundwater Management Program there as well. So some of you may know me from my previous role at LGC and then from working with Chris on some of the previous webinars. And I'll turn it over to Christy.
Thanks, Emily. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christy Clark, and I am with Stantec. I serve as a facilitator working mainly in Lake County, working in their Big Valley Basin. And then I also oversee all of kind of the statewide overlay program for the SGMA duties, so activities, things like webinars and toolkits. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those resources today.
And I'm just going to assume everybody on this call knows that SGMA is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act.
Now they do. Thanks, Lisa. So, and I've been with Stantec for about 3 years, and prior to that, worked a lot on technical editing. So that's something that we do happen to do a lot here, and especially with this program, is doing a lot of just production of documents and editing and those type of things too, which are kind of a companion to facilitation. So with that, I will turn it over to Craig.
Thanks, Chrissy. Craig Moyle. I work at Stantec. I've been with the company since 2007, and I'm part of the Facilitation Support Services Program team, working on behalf of the Department of Water Resources to help GSAs develop their plans and also on the implementation of their groundwater sustainability plans. And for the project, I serve as a managing senior facilitator. So there's some of the folks on the call, like Elizabeth Solomon. I worked with her pretty closely to develop scope, schedule, and budget for how we would support Ukiah Basin as they led up to their adoption of their GSP.
That's great. Thank you. I just want to note, I think I saw Stephanie Horry on the line. Stephanie, you weren't planning on me calling on you, but would you like to introduce yourself just so the group has a chance to meet you? She's like, oh.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. No, sorry. And my name is Stephanie Hoy. I'm with the Consensus Building Institute, one of the facilitation groups working with Stantec and GWR. And I also saw Morgan Johnson with Wireboard, and the bank keep on calling out.
Oh, great. Okay. And now Stephanie's been working in the, sounds like we've got a little bit of background noise, but Stephanie's been working in the Zoom space and she's been at this for a while as well. So I'll let you go back on mute. That's great. And then, hey, Morgan, do you want to just do a shout out? And yes, that's a little thumbs up. Okay. Good enough. All right, Chris, take it away.
Okay, so let's just start out. You guys are on the ground there, seeing how this implementation is going. How do you think Sigma implementation is going?
Okay, all right. Well, so I'm suspecting that everybody on this call has an opinion about that. So I'm going to assume that you're talking about from a facilitation standpoint. So from the standpoint of facilitation, one of the exciting things is at the beginning of this process, there were a lot of people that really had not had a chance to work together. This was something where people were kind of thrown into a bunch of rooms together and trying to sort things out. So from that standpoint, it's very exciting because what's happening in communities are new kinds of relationships are being formed. There are a lot of people that have gained a lot of capacity to do really, really good work, and people are moving forward. I will say, just as a third party in that, and that is our particular job in this process, I would say that a lot of people are experiencing a little bit of shock. We jumped into Sigma. It was a surprise for a lot of people. And once they kind of worked through the idea that they had to do a groundwater sustainability plan, that everyone kind of came to absorb that. And most of them have just tossed those things over the fence. They're just getting ready to start implementation. Of course, there's some exceptions from the critically overdrafted groundwater basins, but for a lot of them, it's just been tossed over the fence. And now the reality of, oh my gosh, we've got to do this thing that we have to do. So I would say that's probably the state of the state at this moment. But let me check in with the other team. I'm guessing I'm seeing Emily's got a smile on her face, and I'm sure Craig's kind of in the weeds a little bit, so he's going to know even more than me. But what are you thinking, Emily?
I saw Craig on mute. Yeah, at least I think that's right. I think a lot of these GSAs are still GSA being Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And if there are any acronyms we throw out today that you don't understand in the alphabet soup of Sigma, feel free to stop us and call us out on that. But I totally agree. Many of these GSAs are still learning how to be agencies and what that looks like, and meeting that legislative deadline of 2020 or 2021 was a big first step for many of these agencies. And there's a lot of work to be done in the next 20 years in the implementation of these plans. But I think we're starting to see some of those relationships forming, some of these agencies really starting to understand what the full scope and scale of implementation of Sigma will look like.
What are you thinking, Craig? Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think across the board, a lot of the GSAs have a really good job in getting their groundwater sustainability plans prepared and submitted on time. And many of them are, experiencing those growing pains that come from forming a new local public agency. That's, Sigma, more or less created many new relationships within all these groundwater basins that were now responsible for sustainably managing. And so there are several that have done a really good job on the startup. I think the North Keens GSA has been very proactive and does a lot of pretty effective outreach through their partnership with the Keens River Conservation District. And then others are, just starting to go into their implementation after adopting their plans and going through those growing pains. So I think the GSAs have done a pretty good job in getting things started.
Yeah, thanks.
And I think it's by no small feat. We should point out that that we've had compliance. I mean, we said form GSAs, everybody formed a GSA. We said develop plans, everybody developed the plans. And while those 2020 GSPs have their problems, you know, those were the hardest basins, the most difficult cases. And they had 2 years less than everybody else to develop their plans. So while yes, we have more work to do, I do think we should acknowledge that that's like perfect compliance so far with the law. And what law do we ever have perfect compliance in, you know?
Mhm.
So it's an amazing accomplishment.
It also brings back another element of shock, because those critically overdrafted groundwater basins are now, because of them being 2 years ahead, they're just starting to receive feedback about their plans. And some of them are learning that their plans have been accepted in terms of being complete by the Department of Water Resources, and others have learned that they've got 180 days to jump in and try to make some corrections and resolve some deficits in their planning process. So this reality is really, really sinking in for people, just kind of at all scales. I'm expecting though, Chris, the people on this call, the audience probably knows as much as we do about how well Sigma's going.
Yeah, well, I like to start off and ask people a question.
Yeah, by the way, if you're online and you have a comment, please put it in chat. We'd love to see it.
Or raise your hand too. That's why we're
we'd love to hear from you.
meeting. Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point. So as facilitators, what sort of services have you been providing, you know, to GSAs?
Okay, well, I can start, and then anyone else on the team can kind of just jump into it. One of the, I think, most important things that we do before we even start facilitation is something called a situation assessment. And that's where we go in and try to find out what is exactly going on and what needs to be happening in terms of stakeholders and the ability of members of the public to engage with the process. Our job as a facilitator, we're responsible for facilitating the process of how the plan development is going or how the plan is going to be implemented. The groundwater sustainability agencies, the community, and the other people that are engaged at the process of developing it, they're responsible for the content of that plan. So it's a really interesting piece of a balance between those two things, the process and the content. So we really need to understand when we're walking into a process what it is that this particular situation needs, what kinds of questions need to be answered, what kinds of decisions need to be made, and who needs to be at the table to make sure that there's a viable, sustainable outcome for that. So that's the first step. And then from there, I'll pass it on to somebody else on my team. So let's see, who does, I need eye movement or something so I know who to send it to. Is it going to go to Craig? Okay.
All right, it might be helpful to just do a quick overview of the Department of Water Resources Facilitation Support Services Program, as well as its written translation support program. That's been in effect with DWR since the past SGMA. So they started in 2015, started providing to GSAs and basins outreach and facilitation services. Early on, it was to form these GSAs and assist on basin boundary modifications and setting up their governance structures, and then supporting their preparation of their GSPs. And so the range of services are all available to the GSAs on an application basis. So there's a form that's on DWR's website. The plan manager for that region fills it out, submits it, and goes into DWR, and they review it with their regional coordinators, and then it goes to the main office at the Sustainable Groundwater Management Office for their review of it, and then they forward it to us to prepare the budgets and schedules and scope. The services that come in under that are things like Lisa said, stakeholder assessments, one of our key elements that really helps set up a base engagements and issues that are affecting the basin, and supporting them on governance development, stakeholder communication engagement plan developments, general public and stakeholder outreach, targeted outreach to underrepresented groundwater users such as disadvantaged communities or Native American tribal organizations and tribes. There's also been just straight up meeting facilitation, committee meetings, advisory committee meetings, board meetings. We've also been doing a lot of inter and intra-basin coordination. We have a lot of these GSPs that developed and implemented, and then there's coordination needs to occur across basin boundaries for them to be able to kind of mutually implement their plans consistent with each other's goals. And then we have interest-based negotiations where you have really sensitive issues you're trying to move forward, trying to address any of, could be underlying technical issues that are challenging them in their GSAs.
One other thing that we also do, and Christy might want to speak to this, is we really oftentimes will help people think through materials like one-pagers, frequently asked questions. Go ahead, Christy, brochures.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to say when Craig offers the menu of options is that there are a set list of things that we've done in several basins that have kind of proven successful, or we know that they might need help with, or that they've told us that they need help with. But I think one of the exciting things about this program is kind of the interconnectedness amongst those different activities that we do. And to that end, that's kind of seeing that something worked in one basin and then something pops up in another basin that they're saying, ooh, gosh, I could really use some help with this particular issue. Have you had that challenge before? And because the facilitators are all linked, and because those activities are known in each of the basins that has an existing service plan, we have plans that we do for them. It's really easy for us to be able to say, hey, I think you might want to talk to this basin over here, or this administrator, or this particular regional coordinator at DWR. And it allows us to plug things into things as kind of, an overall set of tools. And then the resources that Lisa referred to. We have a lot of different toolkit contents and things that DWR has created over the course of the last couple of years. A lot of them have gotten released on Groundwater Awareness Week. But it's just, I think, one of the exciting things about the Facilitation Support Services program isn't just the tailored activities that we can give an individual basin, but it's leveraging what all the other basins are doing and what DWR is doing, and to some extent what State Board or some of the other things are doing too, to kind of weave a very special program for each individual GSA. And that to me is probably one of the most exciting things, dynamic things about this particular program.
I'm going to add in one more thing. Another thing that we've been doing is working with the research community. From the standpoint of the researchers, this has been an extraordinary event. All of a sudden, in one place, 126 new agencies were formed. And that is a laboratory for people who do this kind of work, political science or those kinds of things, where that just never happens. And so the research community has been fascinated by the important decisions people have made. The groundwater sustainability agencies are all have an opportunity to do something differently. There's no template for any of this. All started from scratch. So how did people make decisions? What were the things in common? What did people learn from one another? So that's been really extraordinary. And I think we'll probably see some kind of amazing outcomes. I do see some hands, Chris. I think we should make sure we get to that.
Yes. Micheline, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, for sure. Is my audio okay?
It is. Where are you from?
Great, thanks. Yeah, you were just talking, Lisa, about the scholarship aspect. I'm a PhD student at UC Santa Cruz, and I study groundwater governance as one of my main projects, and have been looking at the implementation of SGMA along the central coast of California with some interest. And I've been primarily concerned with like equitable representation, given that SGMA has a stakeholder participation mandate that calls for the inclusion for the first time of a diversity of stakeholders, including, like First Nations communities and like, quote, like disadvantaged communities, rural well owners. And I've been really curious how like implementers and experts in other basins are weighing like how equitable the inclusion process has been. Most scholarship I read in my own like participant observation have indicated that it could be more representative, especially for basins that received basically had like an existing basin management plan okayed as a GSP. or had an existing water management agency okayed as a GSA. They didn't have to go through the sort of ground up process that other basins did in terms of like integrating all of these different actors. Instead, they had to find a way to satisfy that requirement, but one that didn't necessarily require as much negotiation between actors. So yeah, my first question is on the equity point. And the second is on whether Sigma is actually going to address drinking water issues. I mean, I'm sure most people on the call are aware that about 1 million people in California lack access to clean drinking water, and research, by the Pacific Institute, the Community Water Center, researchers at UC Davis are showing that in addition to disadvantaged communities and tribal nations, rural well owners face a disproportionate burden in terms of access to clean drinking water. And it's looking like Sigma is not going to do an adequate job of addressing that. But I've also been told by at least one general manager of a coastal water agency that DWR is considering broadening the interpretive scope of Sigma with respect to undesirable impacts. So drinking water might be weighed more heavily than like quantity and storage. Yeah, so with that said, drinking water and equity and representation, really curious to hear what experts here have to say.
Yeah, great question. So I have been tracking some of the research out of UC Santa Cruz. So I'm excited. I'll check in with you a little. I have some other things we're doing with researchers, so I'll ping you. I'll get your email from Chris if it's okay. If it's okay, you can give me a thumbs up. I don't want to stalk you or anything like that. So, okay. So let's start with human right to water, and I can certainly comment, but let me just check with my team if somebody has some passion and they wanted to bring to that. Is that something you'd like to talk about, Emily?
Yeah, I can kind of kick things off. I do just want to note, I'm getting a message from Mark Infante that he is trying to raise his hand but can't. So Chris and Deanna, as you're keeping track of the queue, if you could also touch on that, that would be really beneficial. Yeah, in terms of kind of Sigma and equity, and I really appreciate your question. Certainly part of the statute of the law requires GSAs to consider all of the beneficial users and uses within a groundwater basin. And there are some particular parts of the statute in regards to engaging all beneficial users and uses. That being said, I think that human right to water as a California law is really a first step. As I'm sure you know, there are, I don't know what just happened. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Did I mute myself? Interesting.
Yep.
There are no teeth included in the human right to water law, right? So as California as a state considers the implementation of the human right to water, I think it's ever evolving. I think we're seeing some movement with the passage of the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund and all the great work that's happening in the State Water Resources Control Board around SAFER. I think there's a huge nexus and a lot of coordination that's happening between the Department of Water Resources and DWR in the implementation of Sigma, and trying to track not only drinking water quality, but also looking at drought impacts and in coordination across how we're monitoring wells that are going dry. So I think it's certainly a priority that I'm seeing at the state level in trying to ensure that law is upheld. But in terms of the actual implementation of it, I think some of that is still really rolling out across the state. And certainly the current drought is only pressing that conversation forward and really ensuring that all communities can have reliable, accessible drinking water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what she raised in her comment about the triggers, really right now, the enforceability and all of it is with the factors, is that the undesirable impact when you start to lose access to the drinking water. It's a very thin line. It definitely is popping up, though. I think you may even see, as the legislation continues to evolve, that might be an area where we see some more kinds of actions. I don't know, did anybody else want to jump in on that one? Okay, we can probably.
Could I just add one other piece too? I know that Kristen Dobbin, who is now at UCLA Luskin Center doing her postdoc, but was previously at UC Davis, did a really great report on looking at the makeup of GSAs and where stakeholders were not involved within the advisory bodies and the GSA boards themselves. So I can try to track that down and make sure you have that if you don't already.
There's a pretty good chunk of research coming out of Davis. There's been a couple of different things there. I think it would be great to go ahead. I'm going to kind of scroll around a little bit here in my email and see if I can find some other references for people to look at, but the research is quite interesting. And it definitely is something that's been surveyed and people have actually gone out and done on the ground kind of work to it. It is at this point, probably from the perspective of governance, a deficiency, and just because there's no enforceability to it.
And maybe I'll just also add, because I know there was part of that was around water quality, which is a really complex topic as well. And actually, Chris, maybe last year, hosted a webinar about the overlay between a number of pieces of legislation pertaining to groundwater quality, including SGMA, but also the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program and the CV Salts Program, and how the coordination of water quality management, particularly in the San Joaquin Valley, will be coordinated or should be coordinated. And for GSAs that are again still trying to figure out how to be agencies and what that coordination looks like, there's certainly a demand to consider those other pieces of legislation and pursue coordination on drinking water quality management.
I'm going to take notice of the chat. So there's a conversation going on with Mary Elizabeth and Suzanne. And Mary Elizabeth, you made a comment at the end about your feeling a little bit akin to Suzanne. I will just let you know, I've been in rooms with both of you, and I absolutely would guarantee you would like each other if you got to hang out. So just FYI, you're both so passionate. I'm as a facilitator, I just want to express appreciation for both of you because you're the kind of folks that really do show up and take the time. You do your homework, and that is a real gift for a facilitator when you have a stakeholder, a member of the public that takes that kind of effort and takes that kind of work. So thank you to you both. Just want to call that out.
Okay, why don't we go to Teresa, who has her hand up, and then I know we have Mark and we have Suzanne, so why don't we go in that order? So Teresa, you're on if you want to unmute.
I did. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. So your discussion about UCD and the paper you referenced, I would love to see that, have an opportunity to read through that. It kind of dovetails into my question. I'm very impressed. I'm from the Cosumnes Subbasin, so Sacramento County. We're the basin right above San Joaquin. I'm very impressed with what you guys are doing down south. Your connection with Fresno State, with the education community, that's what my question involves. How did that happen? Was the university part of your plan when you started? Did they come on board? Because I've wondered that with our basin leadership a few times, and just as recent as last week, I thought, we have both Sac State and UCD right out our back door. Why are we not working with them within, this Sacramento region for the development of all these plans? I would think, what a wonderful vat of knowledge and information. So how did you guys become connected with Fresno State?
I'm going to let Craig take this because it was actually, this is something he's pretty passionate about. Did you get to come to the webinar with the Fresno State report? Did you get to see that? We did one.
Myself?
Mm-hmm.
This is the second one I've done. I did the one a couple weeks ago, the lunch hour. Is that what you're referencing?
With Thomas. Well, we also, Chris Maven also did a webinar on the Fresno State report. So maybe Chris, can we put that a link to that in there so she can see that? And yeah. We got to walk through, we got to talk with Sarge, the author, and there's some great stuff there. But anyway, I'm going to let Craig talk because this is his brainchild.
Well, part of that is I'm also a Central Valley guy, so I went to Fresno State, and that's where I graduated, and do a lot of work down in the Central Valley for a variety of programs. And so when we were assembling our team for the 2019 and 2024 that we're supporting DWR, I reached out to the California Water Institute, which is a part of the business, one of the business centers within CSU Fresno. And at the time, it was led by Tommy Skada, who was formerly the public works director for the city of Fresno, and then become the director of CWI. We've been working very closely with Sarge Green, who is one of their leads there. He used to work at the Tranquility Resource Conservation District. Just a wealth of historical information. And so we've been working with them through the program, tapping them through the California Water Institute. So we continue to grow that even further because it providing that sort of independent look at major issues that affect California water is really important to fulfill what DWR is looking to do, is really be helpful to all the GSAs as they navigate through this can be a difficult period. And the more support we give to them and also to GSAs, the better.
Yeah, and so that is something, again, we as a facilitation team are working closely with the research community, and we strongly believe the more we can bring that kind of a conversation in, the better.
I think that Craig really touched on something that is important to me and probably others as well, was that unbiased view, that education and information source that doesn't really have a stake in the game, so to speak. So I think that helps build a lot of trust with the information that's being shared with the stakeholders. Thank you all so much. I will say this is really inspiring to see that there are other parts of the state that have really come together, and you guys are really working forward as a team, because the squabbling and all of the finger pointing needs to stop. We have a real problem here, and we just need to start putting our effort into fixing it. At least that's how I look at it. But thank you so much for these opportunities to learn from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, you're on mute.
I think, was it Mark that was next?
Mark, yes, Mark, it's your turn. If you want to unmute, ask your question.
Hi, Mark and I are sharing his computer. So I have a question. It goes back to the makeup of the GSA, and Emily, if you could give me the name of the author of that paper that you were talking about, that would be very helpful, I think.
Will do. Yeah, it's Kristen Dobbin. I'm actually looking for the report now, and if I can find it before the end of this discussion, I'll spend the time.
I have it. I'll
Okay.
look it up right now.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Would you write that down? Okay, so I wanted to ask a little bit more detail. So Sigma seems to suggest that the members of the agency should be elected officials, and that is the case in our basin. We're a medium priority basin, so we just, in January submitted our GSP, and it's too early for feedback. And I don't think we've even seen the public comments under the DWR public comment period yet. However, in thinking about our governance structure going forward, we're in the process of putting together a JPA, and I guess we'll address
just for other folks, that Joint Powers Authority.
Thank you. Yeah. So we may be considering some changes to the GSA makeup. We have in our basin, it's a rural area. We have, interestingly, the large landowners in the basin have put together their own water group. They have an attorney, and they would like a seat on the GSA. And it's a pretty powerful group. They use probably 75 to 80% of the groundwater. And it's a little scary to me. I'm on the Citizens Advisory Committee, and they have had representation on that committee throughout the development of the GSP. But now they want a bigger voice, and that voice could certainly drive all of the decisions. I'm wondering if you all have had experience with having that sort of a stakeholder presence on a GSA that you've worked with.
Craig, do you want to start with that? Because that's something you've done a lot of thinking about.
Mhm.
Why don't
Yeah,
you
so-
start with that?
Yeah, so under SGMA, the entities that are eligible to serve as GSAs either have land use authority, water distribution, or water management authority. And the type of entities that you're describing would likely be groups of landowners that have been within an existing or newly formed water district. And there are examples of those that have been increased within California. It's a different question on whether or not those are entities that do they meet the rule of the law? Yes. And the question then becomes is how does that move forward when they put in their groundwater sustainability plan? I can't answer whether or not it's the right path to do because it's the choice of the locals to be able to go through that path.
And every situation is different. I think that's part of it is the law itself was designed for the community to pick the approach that it was best for itself. Mm-hmm. And I'll let Craig continue, but then we can also talk a little bit about some of the deficits of that, particularly in the context of history.
Yeah, no, I think I kind of paused there. Go ahead.
Can I add one thing? This water group is definitely not a water agency. It's just a group of landowners who decided to get together to fight SGMA. So yeah, the makeup of our board is members of the board of the water agency, the main water agency, the county. So it's a member of the board of supervisors. A municipality, so it's a city council member. And and then another ID one, another agency, water agency. So these are either have the decision about water use or land use, but the water group I'm talking about does not. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
Okay.
Yeah, when SGMA was crafted, when the agencies that are eligible to be a groundwater sustainability agency, they all need to have within their powers, the statutory powers that are given to them, they all need the ability to somehow raise funds and have enforcement of whatever it is that they're intending to do. And so without that ability to do that, it was thought that SGMA really couldn't be implemented. The difficulty of that is there were a lot of people, especially if there are people on the phone that were involved with integrated regional water management, a lot of concern that there'd been a number of community efforts and governance structures that have been set up in a more informal way, or even through grant processes and things like that. And they were not automatically enrolled to become groundwater sustainability agencies because the members did not meet that criteria. So, and I believe that was really a struggle when the law was written. We're really seeing the outcomes of that's showing up, of course, in some of the results. I'm expecting that's probably a little bit of what you're experiencing, even as you ask the question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I will just add too, there are some GSAs across the state that have decided to create a board of directors with seats for certain representatives. Like I know Elizabeth Salmon is here up in Ukiah Valley Basin. They have 2 seats on their board. One is reserved for a tribal seat and one is reserved for an agricultural seat. So every GSA has taken different approaches to who sits on their boards. But in terms of the legal authority to be a GSA, as Craig said, they have to have land use authority or be a water provider.
Yeah, we have ag, cattle, and tribal representatives on our Citizens Advisory Committee. And it's been a very active committee, and the GSA, actually we have several sub-bases, but the GSAs have all taken most of the recommendations, if not all, of the Citizens Advisory Committee. So that's pretty powerful, and I think the appropriate place for those folks to be. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. think Suzanne was next.
Yes, Suzanne, unmute and ask your question.
So I do have a public comment, and it's based on probably the last commenter's comment. I too live in a landowner-based district, and where really one landowner controls the district because of the acreage owned. And even though the population of the smaller landowners, ag res, is much greater than the larger landowners, we actually do not have a voice in voting for members of the board, and there has been no discussion or on even having an advisory committee. And I guess, you know, I commented in the chat that I've been really consistently the only public member at many of the meetings, and having gone to today's meeting after missing a few, I really am very concerned about all of the recharge projects that are being planned for the future and being funded a lot by grants, but also by public funds that will probably not come to pass for 7 to 10 years from now. They're all in the planning phases, and I don't see any reality check with any of the board members or you know, with regard to the present conditions that all of us are facing. And there's been absolutely no discussion of fallowing or of water conservation. And I feel like as a member of the public, I make my public statements and they kind of just bounce off the wall. And so I have a lot of the concerns that, you know, the previous speaker, you know, talked about, and maybe other people that are in the chat, that that really facilitation funding has been, you know, gone out to a lot of the GSAs, but I think that the facilitation funding has missed maybe the most important GSAs that it needs to go to, those that have been operating consistently for the last 50 years, pretty much on their own and outside the public purview. And I don't think there's going to be a change unless there is a greater effort to reach these GSAs and to really involve the public. I mean, the public can't be involved unless they know about it. And the public, I don't feel in my area really understands, you know, the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. So there was a question in the chat about how the consultants, so people, and there was a specific firm that was mentioned, and by the way, that's a firm that we work with as well. So if you remember at the beginning, I was explaining the difference. So a facilitator is helping to oversee the process of how things are happening, particularly with a group, and then the agencies and the technical consultants are responsible for the content that gets put into it. So a lot of people that do the consulting, the very good technical consultants, they're accustomed to doing a lot of plans and things themselves. And so they will sometimes step in and do things that are facilitative. And by the way, you know, board members or members of the public, even I look to Suzanne because I've spent some time with her, do a lot of things that are very facilitative. So a lot of people can help with process, but they are two separate things. And I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that. Okay. And then I want to make sure, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, there's a question also that came in the chat. I think it's a little bit further back, but this question is, do you consider brackish and saline groundwater the same as fresh groundwater in terms of priority and focus under SGMA? And if not, could you elaborate?
Well, so as mentioned, we're responsible for process, not content. And so we actually might even have an opinion about that, but it wouldn't be relative. So that wouldn't be a call that we could make. Thank you.
Yeah, as Lisa said, it is a technical issue. I would presume that it would be addressed through the water quality as one of the undesirable results. You know, under SGMA, you know, as one questioner pointed out, is that under water quality, this GSA is not entirely responsible for what's in the ground right now.
Right.
What you're responsible for is if their management actions mobilize, say, groundwater plumes somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
brackish water, groundwater, the mobilization movement of that would be something that they would manage too.
Yeah.
Earlier question for Mary Elizabeth, I want to just kind of ping on real quick. She asked about East San Joaquin receive facilitation support, but not public outreach support. We are supporting the San Joaquin Subbasin, so Elizabeth and Emily and myself. That one is focused on helping them set up a water accounting framework. As some folks are aware, they have a water budget that assumes a common pool. Everybody draws from the same resource, but each of the 16 GSAs aren't entirely clear and well, how much of the overdraft or underdraft are we accountable for? So we're helping them through identifying a water accounting framework that helps them prioritize their projects. The public outreach piece, that's something that Matt Zadar has been very much pushing forward within the basin. He's the plan manager on behalf of San Joaquin County. And so those are initiatives that he's moving forward on. And it does highlight that there is a lot of need out there, but there's only so much budget that DWR has available to support them. So
I'm going to add to that real quick. Mary Elizabeth was also involved very early in the process. She was part of some work that was done at the beginning on stakeholder assessments.
Right.
And she was also involved in a citizen public advisory group that was convened that made some initial recommendations as the GSA was forming, as well as the initial steps of the GSP development. So, and she's absolutely right. The focus was very specifically on facilitation rather than broad outreach.
Okay, I just want to check in with Deanna for a moment. Have we answered all the submitted questions?
Taking a quick look. I think we have a question that it was submitted, I believe, by Mary Elizabeth. She would like to know who is the top authority that stakeholders can go to if they have issues with the local water district.
Mary Elizabeth, are you able to say, are you talking about?
That wasn't my question. That was somebody else's question.
That was mine. It was mine, Teresa Flewellen.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm just curious, is there an authority within, SGMA and the implementation of all of this that the stakeholders, if they cannot get satisfaction at the local level at their water district with their CGA, is there a governmental authority that is the overseer of the implementation of all of this that we can go to? Because I personally have reached out to the DWR rep for our region and was told that they don't have any authority over what our subbasin is doing.
Yeah, the law is designed as a local control law. The way the law, there are two places where the state has jurisdiction. The state has jurisdiction on compliance with the regulations for the development of the actual plan. So the plan itself, there's a template and people were required to fulfill each of the steps inside of that plan. That's the regulatory authority of the Department of Water Resources. There is a second authority that's through the State Water Board, and that jurisdiction has to do with compliance. So once a plan has been put in, so there are a couple things. Did you do a plan? If you didn't do one and you're not going to do one and you're going to be stubborn about it, then the State Water Board can step in and say, fine, we're going to do one for you. So they have overarching jurisdiction for that. They also have the ability to step in if people are unable to meet their compliance requirements and augment or support that. The triggers, though, they're backstops for failure to follow the requirements of the law. And up until that point, the local control is the ultimate driver for that. And I think it's really important to remember at the time that law was passed, for years and years, you couldn't even talk about groundwater. That was not something that the state, if I was in a meeting, like say in a California water plan meeting or something like that, and somebody said groundwater, half the people in the room would do this. You can't even talk about that. It's off the charts. You absolutely not go there. We could only talk about surface water. So the fact that this even happened in 2014, the fact that these laws passed were really quite remarkable, but there was a political deal that had to be made. And the deal is that there would be a retention of local control, and land use is within the state anyway, jurisdictionally, that is the purview of the state, of the local agencies. So Yeah, it can, it's, I think if you're, that's a great thing about the research too. There's some, I put in the chat, an entire issue that talks about governance, and there is some interesting conversation about that governance structure in there.
And
Thank you.
I would just add that you can submit your comment to DWR through their GSA portal. And even if the plan has already been submitted, like it's on the 2020 GSPs, you can still put in your comment. DWR is not shutting down the comment system, so they will see that comment. So I would suggest, that you might put make a request there. So.
Yeah. Yeah,
Chris, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and so just, it is important though to understand what they can and can't do. They are looking for compliance with the law.
Yeah, and comments submitted on that portal also goes to the plan manager for that basin.
It looks like Stephanie might want to jump in. Did you want to add something to that, Stephanie?
Yeah, thanks for that. I just wanted, to add a little bit on that, because I know Teresa, how frustrating it can be with wanting to raise issues and concerns with how the GSP is either being developed or implemented, and the way that SGMA is set up, that there's only so much that authorities can do. I would say, as Stantec has been alluding to, by submitting these public comments to DWR's portal, those comments are publicly available, and then they go to the plan managers. But with all of that, you're getting on the state's radar, and so that helps make sure that they're, one of the goals is to not be on the state's radar. So I think
that's good. That's a good point. We have a few GSAs on the line. I'm sure not being on the state's radar is actually one of their goals. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just wanted to add that, even though there's not the direct enforcement, there are consequences related to it. So
thank you, Stephanie.
Well, it looks like we're getting close to the end.
Oh my gosh, how did this happen so fast? My goodness.
I know. Do you have another question, Suzanne?
I did have another comment. I go to a lot of meetings that I learn a lot about CV salts and IRWM for the first time. But, the issue is the public is not aware of any of these meetings. And a lot of the GSAs feel very comfortable going to these meetings and reporting out. But most of the information that's reported out, the public doesn't see. And a lot of the information, particularly with regard to water quality that I'm just becoming involved in, is very important for the public to see. Too much is being passed off that, public can't see it because we're involved in these negotiations, and it's important to get the plan together. But, water quality is a part of that plan. And a lot of us that are on domestic wells are becoming more and more aware of the impact of water quality. And I'm sure that those should be questions going forward that more well owners should be asking. Yeah, to everybody, not just the local GSAs that pass it off, but to, DWR. And I think that should be the question that goes into that DWR portal, because some of these issues are really being passed off as being too secret to talk about. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. I see in the chat that you've added the Bill Blomquist book. He has an article in that issue that I attached. He's been researching this from the very beginning. Thank you for adding that. Okay, I think you're at time, Chris.
I think we are. So I just want to remind everybody, we have more office hour sessions coming up. March 29th, land repurposing with the folks at EDF on April 4th, Maurice Hall, and on April 11th, tribal engagement with Anacita Agostinas, the DWR's tribal advisor. I put a link in the chat where you can sign up to get notified of future webinars. So please sign up if you're interested. And I just want to say thank you, Lisa and team, for being here today. I think we had a great session, answered a lot of questions. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's so nice for us to meet people in the community, and your questions make us better. we've learned so much from talking with you. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
Hi,
Right.
Chris. If I can have just 1 minute to,
Sure.
Mark raised a question about if there's a way to link participants with similar issues. Sorry, Eddie raised a question about that, since he realized that both Suzanne and Mark have issues similar to the one he had in his area. And I just want to share a little bit about the NGO Groundwater Collaborative Group. This is a group of different community-based organizations, some tribal members, and as well as different nonprofit organizations that have come together to just start these discussions about groundwater issues in different regions of California. We met once a month and we really push for collaboration, and we strive to connect people that have similar issues so we can work together to figure out solutions. So if you would like to learn more about the NGO Groundwater Collaborative, please email me directly. I'll put my email in the chat and I'll help you get connected with this group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a great session, and we hope to see you at the next one.